You are Locked On Falcons POSTCAST, part of Locked On Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, welcome into the Atlanta Football POSTCAST, your home for the best Falcons football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere else but right here on Locked On. I am Tenitra Batiste, and of course, alongside me are Jarvis Davis and Aaron Freeman. This episode is the Locked On Falcons POSTCAST that you are part of, and that means you're part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And of course, we are your team every single day. Now, guys, it's a tale of two first-year starters. There was Desmond Ridder. Then there was Will Levis. And you know that's not where the QB conversation will start or finish, right? Of course, we're going to get into that. But let's just get into it and talk about the fact that the Falcons, unfortunately, are now back to 500 with a 28-23 loss to the Titans today. So, Aaron, you said feed Derrick Henry, let Jeff Simmons eat, and let Will Levis smoke, folks. The Titans executed their game plan to perfection.
Yeah. Went into this game, there was basically two things that you had to stop. You had to stop them running the football, and the Falcons didn't really do that. It seemed like every single time Tennessee came out there on offense, they ran the ball twice to Derrick and Henry, and they were in 3rd and 1 and were basically able to just keep their offense on schedule. The other thing that you didn't want to have happen was Jeffrey Simmons take over this game and really kind of disrupt your entire offense, whether it was the run game, whether it was the pass game. And he did that pretty much in the first half throughout this game. And he was a really big problem. And then the other thing was you knew the Titans were like, okay, we're going to run the ball, and we just need Will Levis to hit like 3 or 4 deep shots because we know Atlanta's going to stack the box. And he did that. And Tennessee went out there and executed their game plan exactly how they wanted. They drew this up earlier in the week, and they're like, this is what we're going to do. We've been preparing 2 weeks for this. This is the bye week, all that. Went out and executed. And the Falcons should have known this is how you were supposed to stop them. And they didn't really do much to stop them. So you see the result of the game basically off that.
Yeah, and it was a scary thing because, yeah, you kind of expected, okay, Derrick Henry, 22 carries, 101 yards, right? But you also knew that you had the ability to possibly shut that down because, yeah, they had 2 weeks to prepare, but you also are pretty intimately aware of who they are as a team because of who your head coach is for the Falcons, right? And then, like you said, you look at someone like Jeffrey Simmons, who literally seemed to take over the game, 6 solo tackles, 2 sacks, 2 QB hits, and kind of alter the game all on his own. But I mean, man, to see what Will Levis was able to do, it was pretty darn scary because you really didn't know whether or not he was going to be able to show you a Will Levis that you saw at Kentucky, but at the pro level. And that's exactly the Will Levis that the Falcons got a heavy, heavy dose of throughout this entire day. 19-29, 238 yards and 4 touchdowns, no picks, and a rating of 130.5, understandably. So now, Jarvis, your takeaway was that because of all that we just talked about, maybe this Titans team was a little better than we thought, but also maybe this Falcons team was not as good as we thought.
Yeah, like coming into this game, I talked about having an open tryout at the quarterback spot. That's never a good thing, right? And we saw that off the bat. As soon as Malik Willis came in the game, he fumbled the ball, and then the Falcons were able to get only a field goal out of it. But you just kind of see how that can play out, right? Because Will Levis was coming in, making some good throws, looking comfortable. And then next thing you know, you bring in Malik Willis just randomly, seemingly. And I think that, you know, they understood that wasn't a good game plan. And then for the most part, I think we saw Malik Willis maybe like once more, you know, after that. And then like, hey, I think we got our quarterback of the future. So I think that, you know, coming into this game, like you think that you can take advantage of a guy who hasn't had any playing experience in the regular season. And he only had some experience as far as in that preseason. It just makes you think that, you know, all right, why did the Falcons struggle in this game? And I thought it was going to be a tough game because these two styles make fight, right? These two teams want to do the same thing. They want to run the football, play some good defense, and then once it's in the fourth quarter and they're only down by 1 score, hey, come have an opportunity to go win the game. And that's kind of how it played out. Mm-hmm. But I just really feel like this defense, the way the Titans played, like it doesn't need to go. I don't think I can say this too many times on this broadcast. Mm-hmm. Jeffrey Simmons was ragdolling Chris Lindstrom.
Yeah.
Like ragdolling Chris Lindstrom. And I'm not saying that, Chris Lindstrom is an absolute bum. No, Chris Lindstrom is a really good guard. And he met his match today. And when you think about what Simmons was able to do, there was even one point in the game. Here's how I can tell you how good Jeffrey Simmons is. Mm-hmm. The Tennessee Titans on defense started out without Jeffrey Simmons in the game on to start the drive. The Falcons went hurry up, so they wouldn't sub him in the game. That's how you know somebody is wrecking shop for you to continue to get into a no huddle because 98 is in the game, isn't in the game. Oh yeah, let's go, line down, let's keep going.
And then he stripped Desmond Ridder for that fumble, and it was like, yeah,
right, it's a wrap.
like come on, people, like folks, and Jeffrey Simmons didn't sign coming into this game. He's been on this squad. Yeah. So Danico Autry been on this squad. Harry Landry has been on this squad. So my whole point is for me going into this little frizzy right now. I don't know. I'm feeling a little weird. Inside my soul. Yeah, like this was a matchup it was a good matchup for the Falcons, and they got their butts kicked like up front. They got their butts kicked throughout the entire game, and it ended up playing out just how it was supposed to play out. The Falcons being back 500, and the Titans looking like, hey, they might have a little hope going into the trade deadline.
Yeah, maybe that's why they had that conversation with Derrick Henry, according to multiple reports, to say, hey, guy, we're not really going to put you on the trade block. It's a good look. And I'm sure they'll listen for teams. But honestly, when you saw what they were able to do, if they get this Will Levis at least half of the rest of this season, I mean, it's a good look for them to at least try to compete and see if they can't sneak themselves into a wild card position, of course, assuming because of what we're seeing the Jacksonville Jaguars do at the top of the AFC South. But Aaron, another thing that I thought about and just kind of wanted to piggyback on what Jarvis said or kind of swing it your way as well is there were a couple times where, like Jarvis said, he's not downing Chris Lindstrom, but on the same token, I got to say, Jarvis, you were being nice. Because you said, okay, well, maybe this was a rough game. No, this has been a rough season for Chris Lindstrom. This has been a season where we've been scratching our heads about Chris Lindstrom this entirety of the season. And then the whole O-line today was just kind of like, what happened? I mean, Aaron, what do you make of both of those pieces? Kind of what's going on with Chris Lindstrom, if you can even tell, because I think it's been a head scratcher for all of us overall. But then also, what the heck did happen to that O-line today?
I think with Chris Lindstrom, like he's played reasonably well this year if you take his entire body of work into account, but the bad plays have been really bad. And like you have not seen Chris Lindstrom
not used to that
get dominated in the ways that he has gotten dominated, where he's getting face planted, he's getting put on his butt, he's completely whiffing on blocks. Like you're not going to win every single rep in this league, but you just don't see Chris Lindstrom eat turf in the ways that he has eaten turf this year against, really good football players. But like he was a guy that the last couple of seasons when he's faced those caliber of players, like he wasn't getting wrecked by those guys. He would lose reps to those guys, but he was going toe to toe with some of those guys. And I think with this offensive line, Jarvis and I have been talking about this on Locked On Falcons the last couple of weeks, but it's like, we talked about for the first month of the season, the offensive line was a major concern. And then it seemed like they got their act together, but we knew with Washington last week, with Tampa Bay, with Tennessee, it's like Minnesota has a couple of dudes on their defensive line as well. Maybe a couple of those guys get traded, hopefully. But
right.
Like this stretch of games was going to be a real test for this offensive line. And so far they were seemingly passing it, but that Tennessee front, that was my big concern going into this game. I just felt like Jeffrey Simmons is a guy on a different level, and he could just absolutely just single-handedly just take over this game. There's like a couple of guys in this league like that. There's Aaron Donald, there's Chris Jones, and I think Jeffrey Simmons is one of those players on that level as well.
And Jarvis, I think you had a tweet that was kind of saying something to where, maybe we didn't. And I think it was kind of tongue in cheek, like maybe we didn't know how good Jeffrey Simmons really is. But on that same token, like I said, I know it was tongue in cheek from you, but Jarvis, even with him being as good as he is, the O-line was trending up. But what happened today? Was that a step back? Or you know what? I'm just going to leave it right there. What happened today?
Can we start with Drew Dahlman? Like,
Can we? Yeah, that's why I wanted
I'm
to
gonna
hear
start
like
there.
your rebuttal on the whole O-line to go with what Aaron said too.
I'm gonna start with Drew Dahlman. Aaron like explained it beautifully when it comes to Chris Lynch, so I don't need to add anything to that. But let's slide on down to the center of this offensive line. Like that one particular play, like on that blitz where Desmond Ridder got smacked in the mouth by the linebacker, 50. I can't remember his name right now. It doesn't even matter. But like when you see your offensive lineman right here looking, he right there. He understands. Okay, there's nobody over here. Nobody's coming over here, right? There's a certain type of area that he's responsible for. But when you see your linebacker coming right here on your inside shoulder, as you taking a step over here, that's your inside shoulder, and you sit here and look at this dude, and then you go back to your right and let him get a free lick on your quarterback, that is unacceptable. That doesn't have anything to do with technique because you were there. You saw him. All you had to do was just, you see him right there, just draw yourself over to it. You can cut him. You can do whatever the heck you want. But you decided to move your eyes back over here. What drew your eyes back over here? I'm sure Dwayne Leffert is going to be saying, like, what the hell were you looking at, sir? Because that was just like stuff like that. Just boneheaded. That's a bonehead play. I'll qualify that as a boneheaded play because you sat there and you saw the man coming.
I'll tell you looking at it, Jarvis. It was Jeffrey Simmons. He was like, I got to go help my guy out, block Jeffrey Simmons. Like I watched the play and I'm like, it's Jeffrey Simmons. And he just like, I don't got to worry about this guy. And of course, he did need to worry about it. But you're right. It was, that's what I'm saying.
See, like you see how many times we've mentioned this dude's name and it's not going to stop, folks. You're going to hear Jeffrey Simmons' name a couple more times before we get up out of here. But yeah, like Drew Dahlman. And then, okay, all right, we done. I'm done with that because I don't want to get my blood pressure up. The low snaps. Why is Taylor Heinicke playing shortstop in a football game? Like what? Like consistently low. Like I don't know what was going on with Drew today. I mean, and I'm not sitting up here saying my expectations have been that high for him anyway, as being the starting center for this team. But it's just little stuff that can get you doggone killed. I'm talking about, I know people saying, well, Taylor Heinicke caught it. But when you understand like the extra millisecond that he has to take to make sure he gets that ball in his hands, to make sure he secures the ball, C9, if you don't think that's important, that can take the amount off of a route or a guy or him to get his eyes on somebody to be able to throw the ball downfield. If he sees somebody that's open, like that's just the extra time that he has to take in order to get this play so he can make sure it develops. So I think it start, and not only Chris Lynch, the day that he had, Drew Dahlman, and then, I mean, do we have time for me to talk about Caleb McGary? Because
we'll talk about him on the other side because I think I feel like you might get
we ain't got him yet.
So I'm just gonna hold that thought. We're gonna hold that thought on him, but there is more conversation to have because, to your point, Jarvis, that might actually inform the questions that we're going to talk about as far as who is going to be under center and how that looks for going forward. And that could be somewhat mitigated by the O-line. But anyway, Falcons fans, of course, we're going to give you guys a little chance to weigh in a bit later. And we are going to deep dive on the game next. But first, let me tell you a little bit about eBay Motors. So our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're preparing for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see how Vinny's picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Now, 49ers tight end George Kittle, he's had some ups and downs with his big games for fantasy, right along with some disappearing ones. We get it. That's more based on maybe the design of San Francisco's offense, which has a lot of mouths to feed and is looking for those best matchups to maybe use Kittle as a pass catcher. Well, week 8 presents a golden opportunity at home for a quote unquote Kittle game against the Bengals pass defense that's good at corner, but a little suspect at safety and with his linebacker coverage. So in what can be a sneaky and in all likelihood, a high scoring game with Joe Burrow on the other side, Kittle should get his targets with a chance for another massive afternoon. We will definitely be watching to see. Now, Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. That's the same thing with your vehicle. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com, just like I did when I had to get brakes out of nowhere and needed to get the parts quickly, and also needed to get those at an affordable price for my mobile mechanic. And low-key, even inside your ride, they do their thing, right? Because I have some really sweet seat covers that I can't wait to see what they're going to do in terms of changing the look of my car. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, guys. So it's D time. It's D-Day time. We're just going to go ahead and get right into it. With a straight. Desmond Ridder's stat line for the day was 8 of 12 for 71 yards. He fumbled once, but we kind of know, once again, that may not have been all his fault, but he got sacked 5 times too. Again, may not have been all his fault. So Jarvis, if we want to start right there, kind of to wrap up our conversation about the O-line piece and going back to Caleb McGary before we deep dive into this whole QB comparison, let's talk about it. How does Caleb McGary's play, or lack thereof, good play, how did that kind of impact what we saw on offense today from the Falcons?
It's slow. It didn't hinder all the way. It slowed down Taylor Heinicke's basically comeback, because like we talking about like consistently getting beat the same way.
Yeah.
Like we always talked about how we have to give Desmond Ridder some grace, or not me necessarily, but Desmond Ridder has to be given some grace as far as like not making the same mistake over and over again, right? But like we've seen Caleb McGary get beat outside on the edge every time, consistently. Harold Landry wasn't doing anything with his hands. He was literally just coming off the ball, and Caleb McGary was consistently doing like this. That's all you saw the whole second half. You just always saw him chasing. Sorry, guys, if you can't hear me right there. But I think that, when you think about those type of things, it just kind of boils back to, what's acceptable or not. And I feel like if you are consistently getting beat the same way, that means you haven't done anything to try to combat that. Whether it be obviously you can't do anything about it right now, but like in the off season, all that stuff. And then you get this contract. Saying that means that tells me that you think that it's okay from an organizational standpoint. And that's why you're in a situation where, hey, the dude who's back there at number 4, he understands how to get rid of the football. He understands how to throw the football away. He understands how not to take an unnecessary sack. He gets that. He's been in the league before, and because he's been in those situations before. So yeah, like the offensive line, like you said, all those guys, they pretty much, kept their team from winning the game today.
Yeah. And I felt the same, like on a couple plays, I was thinking to myself, when you look at the 28-23, especially in the second half, Aaron, it definitely felt like it was a much closer game than even that for me, because that second half really, really, Taylor Heinicke looked really great. So going back to what we're talking about with Dez, 8 of 12 for 71 yards, he ends up being out of the game, being evaluated for a concussion, but free. He was cleared after that. However, we saw Taylor Heinicke stay in the entire second half. Heinicke finished with 12 of 21 for 175 yards and a touchdown. And he had these guys going. The Falcons scored on 4 of those 5 possessions in the second half before, of course, we saw that game end in them turning the ball over on downs. So you already know, like literally, and this is me being petty, Tenitra, because of Petty Jarvis. We know in that third segment, we're probably going to hear from our petty fan base about it's Heinicke time. But seriously, Aaron, you can't overlook what we saw in what Taylor Heinicke did in the second half. And I want to read something to you real quick before you comment, if that's okay. I was just kind of looking as we're getting information real time from the Arthur Smith postgame presser. And of course, first question he was asked was about Desmond Ridder and basically why he didn't return to the game. And he said, quote, "We didn't take him out for performance issues." Okay. Aaron, you say what?
I say, look, I actually kind of believe Arthur Smith. I kind of believe him, right? Because like this wasn't Desmond Ridder's worst game. Like he wasn't playing like this. If we're stacking these 8 games, like that first half is like, I don't know, middle of the road for what we've seen from Desmond Ridder. So it's like if
That's
you're
fair.
We've seen a lot worse. Yes.
You're pulling the plug on Desmond Ridder for like his 5th best game, you know, like I don't know. Again, 5th best is a weird term to say, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like this is not the game that I thought we would pull the plug on Desmond Ridder for, right? So I just think, you know, Arthur Smith is like, look, you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with. I guess we'll get more information on the concussion or whatever. He got cleared or whatever, but it's like the offense isn't really moving. Heinicke's in the game. Let's spark this offense. You know, they kind of got back to running the football, which they probably should have done a lot more in the first half. But like, you know, and you saw this offense sort of thrive. And so now the question is like, is what we saw from Taylor Heinicke, you know, is that something that we can expect from the first snap of a game if he starts next week against the Vikings? Or is that just the typical, hey, the Falcons always are in a funk in the first 2 quarters and they always sort of figure it out in the second half and make the game more interesting, and that's no different than what we've seen from Desmond Ridder? I don't have the answer to that, but it did look at least like they were functional as an offense in the second half, which we haven't been able to consistently see this season when they've been under Desmond Ridder. So I don't think it's performance based, but at the same time, it's like, maybe, I don't know, man. It's just this team is in such a weird place at the quarterback position.
Yeah, it definitely makes you scratch your head. And I think, Aaron, if I may take a liberty, then Jarvis, I want to circle back to a couple things that Aaron said because I want to get your reaction. But I think the reason, at least for some free, maybe that you can't say completely that he took him out because of performance, but you can't say that he can't because there's still that lingering issue, that situation for Bijan Robinson last week, where people don't feel like they kind of knew or still even know the totality of what happened last week. Did we get all of the information? Was it accurate? Was it, you know what I mean? So I think it almost kind of lingers in the back of your mind, like, okay, was it just a concussion situation? Or are we going to get more details? Or we're going to get less details? We don't know what to do. But Jarvis, I think a couple things that Aaron said, and like we talked about pre-brief, both things can be true. Like,
right.
Yes, this is an offense that just kind of muddles through the first half, and then all of a sudden they come back and fire away in the second half. So Desmond Ridder didn't look any worse than we've seen him look in most first halves of games, right? But on the same token, you can't not see what Taylor Heinicke did in the second half. And then in addition to that, when you look at them, not from the perspective of, you know, rookie versus second-year player, but if you look at Will Levis, and you look at Des Ridder as first-year starters, we know Malik played today, but follow me here. It's hard when you look at what Will Levis did and you see 19 of 29 for 238 yards and 4 touchdowns to not say, well, wow, our guy's a first starter too, and look what we've been seeing. So all I'm saying is, Jarvis, I'm going to throw all that out there for you, and I just want to hear what JD has to say because, I don't know, Jarvis, it leaves a lot of questions on the table.
Yeah, because I think when I don't believe Arthur Smith. Like, let me just start by saying that, and here's why. Because we're talking about all 11 guys. Arthur Smith always talking about the betterment of the team, right? When it comes to making these decisions. Like, I understand that, you know, he got the concussion and he was clear, but you still decided not to bring him back into the game. But look at the other 10 guys in that first half. Like, and then fast forward to look at the other 10 guys in the second half. You saw guys with excitement. You saw Taylor Heinicke up there doggone acting like, yeah, Mother Blanco, let's go. Like, I haven't seen that from the quarterback position this year. I mean, I saw it a little bit. You saw it a little bit in a couple of games, but just overall, like seeing him be able to show that emotion and understanding, like all the guys are still looking at him like, oh man, we out here moving the ball. We ain't even got our number one wide receiver on the field.
Yes.
How we moving the ball without him?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it was like he wasn't even there. And like it did when it came down to third down, even on the fourth down play at the end of the game, he made the right throw, made the right read. The ball was there. Van Jefferson just didn't catch it.
Yeah.
Like those things matter. Like the other 10 guys on this field matter. I know we talk about how Desmond Ridder, but I think that for me, like that team concept matters.
Sure.
So you got to look at how your team responds to him. Not only how he plays, but how does the team respond to your quarterback? And I saw Taylor Heinicke up there talking to Drew Dalman. Like, yeah, man, just kind of break it down because, those low snaps. I'm sure he was saying, hey, man, I need you to get those bad boys up. Like that type of communication is vital. We talked about how Kyle Pitts and Desmond Ridder was starting to build a rapport because the communication got better. And when you think about a backup quarterback coming in the second half of a game with no first team reps at all during the week and coming in and scoring on 4 out of 5 drives, like you said, T, you can't ignore that. Yeah. And I'm sure Arthur Smith is not going to ignore that. Let me say this. Let me scratch that. I hope he's not ignoring how his team responded to the way Ford played today.
Yeah, because other than, and in my mind, I was like, no, Taylor Heinicke, go to the sideline, so that they wouldn't have to go to fourth down and so they could also stop the clock. But to your point, Jarvis, when they did get to fourth down, he put the ball where it needed to be. It was just unfortunate. I think Van Jefferson was in his mind kind of halfway down the field, right? So, one of those things, it's going to be very, very intriguing and interesting to see how this conversation goes as we continue throughout the week and whether or not we hear when installs start to happen that it's going to be Des Ridder versus, say, Taylor Heinicke. So we know you guys have thoughts and we know we want to hear from you guys as well. So definitely let us know how you want to weigh in. But first, I want to give you guys a little insight about DoorDash. And, you're probably at a point right now where you need to feed yourself and have some comfort food, right? So anyway, did the game go to timeout? Not this one, but if it did, time to order in with DoorDash, especially if it would have gone maybe to overtime in some way, shape, or form. Is it halftime? That's ordering time. 2-minute warning. It doesn't matter. But whenever the game clock stops and the Falcons take an L, that's probably when it's time for you to order DoorDash because you're in your feels. Time to pull out your lucky jersey and order your favorite apps and snacks on DoorDash because, hey, it's football season and the season continues regardless of what happened earlier today. Why root for your team on an empty stomach or why be sad on an empty stomach? Order on DoorDash and save on football watch party favorites, pizza, wings, soda, burgers, or even just buns on DoorDash, and it'll all get delivered without you missing the game. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23, subject to change, terms apply. But I'll tell you the code again, LOCKED23 for 50% off up to a $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. All right, guys, we know you're in your field, so we know you probably have entered the chat and have some comments. Look at Bath, Champagne_Bath was ready on cue on site. Ridder just needs to pick up a clipboard and learn until he's ready. He will be okay, but he needs time. Aaron, Jarvis, thoughts?
Well,
Go ahead, Aaron.
The on-the-job trading it hasn't been going great, right? It hasn't been going great, right? It's just like, hey, young blood, take a timeout,
young fella.
Yeah,
you gonna
take this day off, and we'll figure it out. Go on break a little bit early, and we'll get the job done, and you can come back and
go ahead, clock out for me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Jarvis, you're treating him like Tink Tink.
No, like seriously though, I mean, well, let me for all the folks, who, want Ridder to be out of here. And I guess I'm asking myself this question too. So if they decide to go with Taylor Heinicke, is that it? Is that it for Desmond Ridder?
Yep.
I know, I like the idea of going into the offseason of getting a quarterback or needing a quarterback. Is that really what you want? I mean, but for me though, I guess I'll go ahead and answer it since I put it out there. I really feel like this is a situation where Arthur Smith needs to win this year.
Yeah.
I really feel, not saying that he's going to get fired at the end of the season if it goes left or it ends up being 7-10 again. But there needs to be some march towards winning this division this year and getting into the postseason and getting a little taste of that and see what that feels like. Because like I said, this defense has been playing solid all year. And I'll give them a little grace for what happened in the second half of that game. You too, number 3. I give you a little grace. You know, I give you a little grace. I give you a little grace, sir. You know, everybody has bad games. And you don't want to waste what you have on on the defensive side of football because guys have been playing lights out this year for you.
Yeah.
So I think that make a decision on the quarterback, and hopefully it can be a guy that the team responds to and be efficient. Because if you can be efficient if Taylor Heinicke can be efficient like he did today, I mean, I think you have your answer right there.
Yeah, and Jarvis, it's interesting because, like you said, you've got an efficient Taylor Heinicke, right? And I'll give you guys one more quote from Arthur Smith's post-game presser. Quote, "We just finished the game. Obviously, we have a lot of confidence in Dez. I didn't take him out for performance issues. Heinicke did his job. That's why he's here. We also have a lot of faith in Taylor." Okay, so that's kind of setting the stage for us to say,
paid him $7 million. I was hope so.
Right, exactly. Interestingly enough,
we know.
Right.
That's your insurance policy.
What I read in there is we got confidence in Dez, but we got confidence in Taylor too. So he kind of left. To me, that was a little bit of a leave of a door opener. But the reason I wanted to go back to that with you guys just quickly to talk about defense is you can do things like start slowly in the first half, like the Falcons have been doing most of the season, when you know for sure that your defense has your back and your defense is going to hold it down until you can fight your way back into it. But Aaron, it's tough when your guy, Grady Jarrett, goes down with a knee injury, he doesn't return. And then LaCale London, who is a replacement, then goes down early in the third quarter with an injured knee himself. And not to speak of what happened on offense with Keith Smith and Drake London, but more importantly on the defense, you look at that piece, they've been the stalwart on this team this entire season. I mean, what happens if they can't go? And how much of an impact was it not to have Grady there for this full game today?
Yeah, I think it was a big impact, right? You expected Grady and Onyemata to sort of do their thing, Calais Campbell do their thing. That's been the trio for this group, and you've got a sprinkling of Ibiketti and Lorenzo and Dupree or whatever, but it's that trio right there of those 3 guys, those veteran guys that are sort of the carrying your defensive line, and without one of those guys for most of the game, like you didn't really see a whole lot of pressure on Will Levis. You didn't really see the team stop the run, and you saw the breakdowns in the secondary that we have not really seen from this group at all. I mean, we've seen a couple of it this year, but like not to the degree that we saw this past Sunday. And so, like we've been sort of like, hey, this defense is still going strong. Hey, I guess this is what they are. And it's like part that, you as Falcon fans and people that have watched this team not play good defense, you're like, did they just run out of mojo or they just have a bad week? Right. And so like, if your defense isn't going to play the way that they've played for the first 7 games for the rest of the year, like that's going to inform the quarterback conversation, because now you need your offense. You're not going to be able to win these games 20-17 or 17-16 and all these sort of low scoring games. Now you're going to actually need to put points on the board. And that may be the thing that prompts you to make the change at quarterback. If Desmond Ridder, if he gets to start next week, who knows? And you can't get that spark back.
Indeed, because this is the game where the Falcons gave up the most points this season, 28 points. Falcons, of course, go down 28-23, and they are now back to 500. We're going to talk about it more tomorrow on the Atlanta Football Party. We appreciate you guys stopping by the Locked On Falcons postcast, your home for the best Falcons football talk. And like I said, the party continues tomorrow. Come back and check out Aaron Freeman, Jarvis Davis, Tori McElhaney, and me, and we're going to talk more about the Falcons. See you then.